everyone, my name is Hallie and welcome to the Royalty. Today we're learning about the Celestial Lions. Let's do this.
I'd like to say a huge thank you to my royal patrons. My tier 2 royalty, Izzo, and my tier 1 royalty, Hansel Panda, Suki SJ, Sternly, Dan Cohen, Chaos 5, Matt Ben, and Dale Niren. Your support allows me to make my content sponsor free.
So we're a newcomer. So who are the Celestial Lions for newcomers? I never thought a chapter coming from the Imperial Fists could keep my attention so well. And yes, I already know that. Look at me, learning.
Hello everyone.
Who is she? Drop me a name in the comments right now.
This is Narina from 40k Theories, and welcome to this new episode of 40k Lore for Newcomers. For this episode, nominated on Patreon by Atlas2077, we will be taking a brief look at the Celestial Lions Space Marine chapter.
You have my attention, Narina.
This video will be a brief overview for certain events that may be explored in greater depth within additional videos in the future. So, without further ado, let's begin.
I'm listening.
We are sons of Dawn and we know nothing of surrender, even when victory is out of reach. What concerns us is injustice, ignominy. If we could be said to fear anything, it is the shame of our legacy being fouled by lies.
I thought y'all were all about fortification of the Sons of Dawn. That's why you're big Minecraft fans, right?
The Celestial Lions are a loyalist chapter of the Adeptus Astartes, descended from the highly famed and respected Imperial Fists Legion.
Respected?
Like all Space Marines, each battle brother of the Celestial Lions is a genetically augmented transhuman super soldier that is larger, stronger, and more resilient than a typical human. Over the course of their existence, the Celestial Lions have proven themselves to be stalwart and unwavering defenders of humanity, protecting countless Imperial worlds from both Xenos and traitor forces alike. However, while the chapter have acquired many notable victories and battle honors throughout their relatively short history, the Celestial Lions are a chapter that is now perilously close to extinction.
I was gonna say, I've never heard of them. I've never heard of any victories. I've literally heard nothing of them. So, you're building them up like I should know who they is.
Because of the chapter's strong moral principles and hatred of perceived injustices, this has led to the Celestial Lions inadvertently making a powerful enemy within the Imperial government, one that will not rest until the chapter has been utterly destroyed.
Okay. We destroy it.
Since then, tragedy after tragedy has befallen the chapter, leaving only a figurative handful of warriors left to maintain the chapter's legacy.
Isn't it the Lamenters that are cursed?
Despite this, the Celestial Lions continue to fight for the Emperor and the Imperium's innumerable citizens, and like the beasts that serve as their namesake, the chapter will continue to fight with pride, courage, and unrelenting ferocity.
Still no fortification then.
If the Imperium remembers us at all, it will be as one of mankind's most grievous failures. But we have not failed mankind. Mankind has failed itself.
Now that's something we can agree on. Mankind did fail itself. We should kill them.
The bitter hearts and closed minds of weak men and women will see us dead before dawn.
I bag it.
The exact founding of the Celestial Lions themselves remains unknown, although the chapter itself has been documented as being created sometime around M38.
There is pretty much no understanding when most chapters were founded. Like, if we're being deadly serious, name a chapter we definitively know when they were made. And I don't mean the first group.
Sometime following the events of the 25th founding, the Celestial Lions would be one of 3 chapters selected in order to maintain vigil over a nebula known as Ilara's Veil, a task that the chapter would devote themselves to fiercely, alongside the Star Scorpions and Emperor Spears chapters.
Who the hell are the Dark Scorpions and the Emperor Spears? I have never heard of them a day in my life.
However, the chapter's spirals towards extinction would begin in late M41 with the events of the Catan insurrection. In 988 M41, the world of Qatar would erupt into open revolt which, unbeknownst to the Imperium at the time, was due to both the Catan priesthood and planetary governor falling to the worship of the chaos god Slaanesh. 5 battle companies.
Oh, come on. You didn't think I was going to say anything? My girl Slaanesh involved? Oh, I'd fall to her too.
From the Celestial Lions, along with the forces of Inquisitor Apollyon, would travel to Qatar in order to crush what was initially suspected to be a minor rebellion.
Minor.
After coming into conflict with traitor planetary defense forces and renegade forces from the Astra Militarum, the Inquisitor would come to learn the true extent of the chaotic corruption that
I vaguely know that the Celestial Lions are not the biggest fan of the Inquisitors. Is this why? Are we about to find out why? Because, like, I've been wondering.
had befallen the world. After a 3-month-long campaign, the rebellion had been crushed by the Celestial Lions, and the chapter's warriors returned to their ship and set course to their homeworld of Elysium 9. But as the Astartes left Qatar's orbit, the remaining elements from the Imperial Naval Fleet would begin subjecting the world to an intense orbital bombardment.
Oh!
The Celestial Lions would learn that this bombardment had been ordered by Apollyon, an act which horrified and angered the Astartes.
Damn.
Wally the Soul attempted to halt the bombardment, but was incapable of belaying the orders of an Inquisitor, resulting in Qatar being purged of all life. This series of events would result in the Celestial Lions being highly prominent and vocal critics of the Inquisition, with the chapter
I knew it! I knew they weren't fans of the Inquisition. Well, that's fair. They did exterminate the entire planet after they went through all the trouble.
publicly condemning the organization for what they believed to be an entirely unnecessary action.
Fair.
Little did the chapter realize that they had effectively signed their own death warrant, for the agents of the Inquisition would not tolerate having their authority questioned, not even by the Adeptus Astartes. Shortly after the destruction of Qatar, the Celestial Lions would experience the first of their many misfortunes. The chapter would dispatch a number of senior officers to Terra in order to bring their case before the High Lords of Terra, although the ship would never reach its intended
You think that had something to do with the Inquisition? Because I do.
destination. The Astartes vessel, at least officially, veered off course due to an unexpected and highly intense warp storm, which resulted in the ship manifesting deep within Orc territory.
Officially.
Despite this, the Celestial Lions remained undeterred, viewing the loss of their delegates as being little more than an unfortunate accident. The chapter continued performing their duties, seemingly oblivious to the fact that they had an enemy in the Inquisition who had already begun taking steps to ensure the death of the Celestial Lions.
Let's go. Death.
Our enemies do not move in the light, where they run the risk of facing our blades, nor are they truly in the shadows. But they occupy positions of power so far above us in the hierarchy of man that exact identities become meaningless. They have the power and influence to deceive us, and deceive us they did.
Yo, what did they do though?
Over the course of their relatively short history, the Celestial Lions would prove themselves as true scions of Rogal Dawn, exemplifying their Primarch's indomitable spirit and prowess upon the battlefield.
Oh.
The most notable of these conflicts, however, which would also prove to be the most disastrous for the chapter's warriors, was the Third War of Armageddon.
I need to learn about this War of Armageddon. I've heard a lot about it and I've still never looked into it. Someone remind me.
In 998 M41, the Orc warlord Ghazghkull mac Uruk Thraka would launch his second
I know Thraka! I heard a lot about him. I heard a lot about him in the Choose My Faction stream.
invasion of the Imperial Hive-world of Armageddon, almost 57 years to the day after his previous war for the world had begun. The Celestial Lions would be one of many Space Marine chapters that would come to the world's aid, with the Lions contributing the entirety of their chapter assets towards the Imperial war effort, and they were assigned to the defense of Hive Volcanus.
I'm assuming that didn't go well.
However, almost immediately after their arrival, the chapter began to suffer horrendous casualties due to being frequently given inaccurate or even entirely false intelligence that would lead to the chapter's warriors frequently being ambushed by overwhelming Orc forces.
Damn.
The chapter's fleet in orbit fared little better, as their ships were ambushed or deliberately directed into Orc-held space as they sought to replenish supplies.
That's such a dick move. Am I wrong, or is that just like a really big dick move? Who gave them the wrong directions? I wonder.
Thunderhawk gunships en route to reinforce Hive Volcanus with additional warriors would be regularly shot down by Imperial anti-air batteries, while those returning to their ships in orbit would be destroyed by their supposed allies. While a number of high-ranking officials through the Armageddon forces had their suspicions to the contrary, these losses were officially classified as being the result of ill fortune.
Yeah, doesn't sound like it.
During the Battle of Mannheim Gap, the Celestial Lions would lose 4 entire companies following a devastating ambush by the Orcs, although the chapter would continue to battle fiercely despite the overwhelming odds. What had begun to truly concern the chapter, however, was that each of the chapter's surviving apothecaries were being picked off by sniper fire as they attempted to harvest the gene seed of their fallen brothers.
So I know that gene seed is very important, because if you can't manufacture more and you've got a limited supply, you're fucked if that's gone. So that's real bad for them, like real bad.
Official records state that these snipers were Orcish in origin. The weapons utilized by the snipers were Imperial in origin and wielded with a degree of skill that was arguably beyond the capabilities of an Orc.
Honestly though, like I can't imagine an Orc just shooting people, like for real.
A small number of surviving Lions were able to break through the Orc lines and retreat to the safety of Volcanus Hive, although the chapter's captains, the majority of their chaplains, and all but one of their apothecaries had been slain. The final apothecary would be found dead shortly after the survivors had returned to Volcanus, sporting a single lash wound to his temple, leaving only a total of 96 warriors remaining within the entire chapter. A sergeant named Ikini Dubaku, who had taken command over the remaining Celestial Lions, would petition Grimaldus, Reclusiarch of the Black Templars chapter, to grant the Celestial Lions their last rites before they returned to Mannheim Gap, in order to die with honor alongside their brothers.
That's a big
Much
one.
to the chapter's surprise, Grimaldus instead chose to rally the remaining forces from Hive Hellsreach in order to march into battle alongside the remaining Celestial Lions, so
Did I just spoil Hell's Reach?
as to grant the chapter a chance to regain their lost honor. Despite Imperial forces suffering heavy losses, Dubaku would slay the Orc warboss Thogfang in combat, before Grimaldus called in reinforcements from the Black Templars and Knights of Dawn chapters to purge
Have I just spoiled the entire end of Hell's Reach? Oh my god.
the remainder of the Orcs within the Mannheim Gap. Following the culmination of the battle, Dubaku, who had proved himself as a great leader to his brothers, would be appointed by High Marshal Helbrecht of the Black Templars as chapter master of the Celestial Lions.
Pretty cool.
Helbrecht would then grant him a set of ancient and ornate power armor that dated back to the time of the Horus Heresy, as well as the strike cruiser, the Seventh Son,
That's pretty cool.
as gifts to the Lions.
Yeah.
The Celestial Lions would then leave Armageddon in order to return to their homeworld to rebuild their chapter, escorted by a small detachment of Black Templars to help defend them against any actions from the Inquisition. Several years later, following the creation of a colossal warprift known as the Cicatrix Maledictum, the chapter's homeworld would be invaded by a massive chaos warband known as the Exiliarchy.
That's just typical, right? Had to be one of them.
The forces of chaos would prove to be so overwhelming that the remaining Celestial Lions were forced to retreat, evacuating as much of the world's population as they could before abandoning the world to the traitors.
Ouch.
Dubaku would petition the Emperor Spear's chapter to relocate the remainder of the Celestial Lions to the Spear's homeworld of Nimenton, although he would be assassinated shortly thereafter by an inquisitorial assassin.
Why?
The final fate of the Celestial Lions is currently unknown.
Oh my god.
Your future life shall be a series of trials, one after the other, until you attain the glory that is your due at the side of the Emperor. You shall face the hardest first, so that we know we are not wasting our time.
That's one way to put it.
The Celestial Lions are a mostly Codex-compliant chapter, although the chapter utilizes a number of different terms for the various ranks and positions held by ranking officers. Company captains are known as war leaders, while squad sergeants are designated as pride leaders. The psychic warriors of the chapter's librarians are branded as spirit walkers, while the members of the chaplaincy are known as death speakers, with the medics of the apothecarian being referred to as lifebinders.
Well, they haven't got at least 3 of those right now. They've got none of them.
The gene seed of the Celestial Lions, being derived from the Imperial Fists, is noted to be one of the most stable throughout the entirety of the Adeptus Astartes. Despite the stability, this supply of Dornian gene seed is noted to display a number of flaws, specifically a number of deficient zygotes that result in an inability to produce the Betches gland or Susan membrane organs.
Okay.
This by extension means that each battle brother of the Celestial Lions is incapable of producing a Space Marine's acidic saliva, nor are the chapter's warriors able to enter a state of suspended animation in order to protect them from instances of intense physical trauma.
Damn. So
And that concludes this edition of 40k Lore for newcomers.
Thanks, girl. I appreciate that. You have been a doll in assisting me in my understanding. Let's hit up Major Kill. So I decided to hit up Major Kill. I decided he would be a second video kind of guy. So let's go.
G'day, guys and gal.
Hey.
Everyone always says that the Lamenters have it the worst.
That's what I said.
After all, they are cursed. And whilst you aren't entirely wrong, they aren't the only nice guys to get cucked.
Yeah.
Cue the Celestial Lions. There are 3 things that the Warhammer 40k universe doesn't tolerate: common sense, nobility, and explicit mentions of sexual activity. The Celestial Lions
Hey, let's be honest. Maybe the Imperium doesn't, but the world does.
fit into the category of nobility, and whilst you would think that their lack of common sense would counterbalance the scale, it does not. After all, these are the guys who try to issue a formal complaint to the High Lords of Terror about the Inquisition.
And justifiably so!
Yeah, they went about as well as can be expected. If you aren't a Space Wolf or a Dark Angel, don't mess with the Inquisition. Before we get started, there are 10 days until the end of the year.
Gonna skip forward a little bit.
He created 20 legions of Space Marines in his original vision for the Astartes.
I am aware of this.
Horus being a bold piece of shit and declaring jihad on the galaxy meant that for health and safety reasons, those legions had to be broken down into various 1,000-man strong chapters.
Except for the Black Templars, constant crusade. You can never prove they got more than 1,000.
You know, unless you're a Space Wolf or a Black Templar,
What did I just say?
or who continue to cosplay as huge legions. Since then, the amount of Space Marine chapters in the Imperium has exploded in size, with there now being over 1,000 chapters, each chapter a descendant of one of the original 20 legions. Some chapters are more or less just recolors of their original legion. Other chapters look completely mangled and nothing like their ancestors, generally because some idiot tried to mess with the gene seed,
We know how well that goes.
or they mix the gene seed in with traitor gene seed, which,
Well-
while that sounds like a terrible idea, actually has created some of the most powerful and loyal chapters in the galaxy. Looking at you, Space Sharks.
Kakaradin.
Fortunately for the Celestial Lions, the lion part of their name is more symbolic, so they don't have tails or manes or any other fairy shit. They are a descendant of the Imperial Fists, founded around the 38th millennium and inherited a lot of their ancestors' traits. A big one that they have a strong sense of duty and doing what is right. Plus, they have a really cool colour scheme that reminds me of the Stormcast Eternals from Age of Sigmar. The Celestial Lions were off being good guys and doing their thing, including but not limited to safeguarding a volatile section of space called the Veil, making friends with 2 other ill-fated Space Marine chapters.
Yeah, like, we didn't really find out what happened. Like, I'm assuming they're the ones that were corrupted and killed.
And spending unreasonably long amounts of time polishing their golden armor. This all changed when the Fire Nation attacked. Sorry, when the Inquisition was like, "Yo, Goldie Paws, we have a plan."
Goldie Paws. That was a good one. I'll give you. That's probably the best joke you've ever told, Major Code.
Which is having heretical uprisings. Get your ass over here. And the Celestial Lions were happy to come give them a hand because, you know, it's their job. The issue arises, however, when you compare different people's perspective of what a heretic is. The planet was sick of the Imperium, and there was some chaotic influence, but it more just seemed like they wanted a more democratic process. The planet was pretty much Hong Kong, and the Imperium was China.
This is getting deeply political.
Anywho, the Celestial Lions landed on the planet and proceeded to obliterate any resistance they encountered, suffering only minor casualties and pacifying the planet in a matter of weeks. Any hope the planet had of removing Carrie Lam had been crushed, and the planet accepted this and knew their place. And then everyone shook hands and called it a day. Fuck.
And then the Inquisition was like, "Bah, bah, bah. Die!"
Fucking psych. The Inquisition did an assessment of the planet and deemed that the taint of chaos had been removed, but you can never be too safe. Hence the planet was exterminatus, and all 8 billion people living there were purged as a result of this.
Great plan, Inquisition. Did you think to tell anyone? Did you think to have a discussion with anyone before you did that?
The Celestial Lions were like, bruh, and tried to stop the exterminatus because A, by blowing up the planet, all the time, effort, and life that the Lions had sacrificed for the campaign was all wasted, and B, don't fucking blow up planets because you feel like it. Unfortunately for the Lions, however, the Inquisition doesn't really give a fuck about your feelings, hence the exterminatus was completed. Now, unlike the Space Wolves, the Lions didn't have the balls to just straight up attack the Inquisition to save the planet, so instead they begun to write strongly worded letters about how hurt their feelings were.
Imagine just being like, Imperium, I am sad to pronounce that I feel that your Inquisition has gotten out of hand. They have exterminated the planet with an intention that was not necessary in the current situation and the current climate. I believe that this exterminatus was inappropriate and would like to bring this matter to your attention for deep consideration.
They refused to work with the Inquisition, and they even asked Santa to put them on his naughty list. At first, the Inquisition was like, whatever bro, but then Christmas came and all they got was coal in their stockings, so they decided to act. Now, a lot of the misfortunes that the Celestial Lions experience from here on has not been explicitly stated to be the work of the Inquisition.
But it wasn't explicitly said to not be the Inquisition.
But it's heavily implied it is, and for the sake of good content, I'm just going to say that everything from here out was the Inquisition's fault. When the Celestial Lions letter to the Emperor about how mean the Inquisition is never got a response, they sent a team of their best delegates to Terra, except that they never made it. The ship was found destroyed deep in Orc territory. People just said it was an unlucky warp storm, but people also occasionally put light bulbs up their rectums for pleasure, hence people cannot...
Did you do that? It's okay if you did, but like, don't do that.
Be trusted. It was 100% the Inquisition that did that to them. Now, the autistic nature of Astartes means
I hate when people use autistic as a describer. But let's move past.
that this hint by the Inquisition to stop complaining about them was not picked up, hence the Lions continued their crusade. They did this until they were summoned for the Third War for Armageddon, a massive planet-wide war on a world that I don't even feel bad for considering how aggressively it is named. Calling a planet Armageddon, then expecting the Orcs not to attack it is like dressing up the choir boys in latex and then expecting them to devote their entire chapter to this conflict.
I was gonna skip that. That was getting dicey.
Alongside 24 other Space Marine chapters and a shitload of cannon fodder, guardsmen. However, within 3 months of pretty standard combat, their casualty rate was extremely high, like way higher than any other chapter in the conflict. You would have thought that the Death Corps of Krieg had been deployed instead of our good Golden Boys, but no. This wasn't to say that the Celestial Lions were bad at war, they were actually really good, but they always seemed to be in the wrong place at the wrong time. The Orcs always seemed to deploy in way higher numbers with way more discipline against the Lions as opposed to everyone else. To make matters worse, the Celestial Lions were targeted by the only regiment of elite Orc snipers in the entire galaxy.
that don't exist. Like, there is no elite orc sniper section. I'm telling you now. That's one that I'm definitely going to put on the Inquisition. There's no way orcs are getting that good with snipers.
Unlucky. In reality, this was the Inquisition's work through unknown means, likely by just riling up some of the war bosses. They were able to bait a lot of the orcs towards the lions, and the orc snipers were more or less just a couple of Vindicare assassins painted green. To make matters even worse, all their intel was dodgy. They would go into a mission expecting to reinforce a couple dozen guardsmen against a couple hundred orcs, only to arrive to an orc rally point for their best warriors numbering in the thousands. Or they would protect a
Yay!
convoy that was travelling in a pacified safe area, only for a garguant to appear and wreck their tits. Nothing added up. They received orders very slowly, if at all. Once they begun to rely on
Because it's hard to give them orders when you've got to find the intel of where the orcs are first.
their own scouting equipment, because all the intel was dog shit, that begun to fail as well. Hence they sent out their own scouts, who ended up just vanishing or popping up later dead. They begun to have some success by using their camera feeds for their own ships in orbit, but then their ships started getting raped for no clear reason. One of their main ships was unable to receive orders regarding a Black Templar spearhead attack due to some shenanigans, hence fell out of formation and was destroyed.
Ouch.
To the Lions' credit, despite all of this, they put in a bloody good shift and suffered an amazingly small amount of casualties despite what they'd been through. By small, I mean they had lost half their chapter, but that's actually quite a good effort considering.
Considering, yeah.
Then, shit went south. I mean, shit was already
I was going to say, how much worse can it get?
south, but I mean like, shit went to Antarctica, was frozen, then violated by some emperor penguins on meth kinda south. The Lions were told of an orc construction yard where they were building gargants located in the Mannheim Gap. This operation had to be destroyed, otherwise the orcs' gargant force would be able to wipe out the nearby city. The Lions were a bit like, because of how poorly things have been going, but
Like, honestly, I'd be the same. I would 100% have been the same.
after doing their own recon, decided that the intel was good for once and that they would go. The Lions pulled off a masterclass attack, extremely well coordinated and efficient, and the operation would have been an amazing success, if it wasn't for the Inquisition. See, the Inquisition, in their spite, told the orcs of the attack before it happened, hence as the Celestial Lines were attacking, all of the gargants that were supposed to be unfinished and inoperable
That's so fucking trash.
suddenly sprung to life as thousands of orcs emerged from dozens of hiding places to ambush. To make it even worse, those pesky orc snipers with their high caliber Imperial snipers as well as their extreme accuracy and ability to target Celestial Line commanders had returned and were mowing down our golden boys.
Golden Boy's going down.
The Lions tried to retreat, but by the time they got out, only 100 or so were left alive. Their highest ranking member was Iken Dubaku, and he was just a sergeant. To make matters worse, the only surviving apothecary from the battle, aka the only one that knew how to work with Gene Seed, was then assassinated by the Inquisition the following day.
Oop.
They then sent out one of their brothers to put out a call to the Black Templars, not for help or salvation, but just to tell them that the Inquisition was still massive assholes and that orc snipers are bullshit.
Like, vibe though, that's exactly what I'd tell them too.
Grimaldus, the legendary hero of Hell's Reach, found said brother dead in his Thunderhawk. His ship never made it, but the message was on a hologram that Grimaldus watched. Grimaldus was like, fuck, and travelled to where the last remaining Lions were preparing to attack the Mannheim Gap once again, so they could die alongside their brothers in a glorious last stand.
That's pretty sick. I still think I'm ruining Hell's Reach for myself though.
And Grimaldus wasn't super down with this idea because it would be a bit of a waste, and he would prefer that the Celestial Lines retreated back home and rebuilt their chapter. Dubaku was like, nah bro, gonna last stand it.
The fuck was that accent, bro?
It's actually pretty ironic that Grimaldus, a Black Templar, would be the one who was trying to be reasonable here. Like sure, last stands are epic, but the Imperium needed every last chapter if it was going to survive. Grimaldus realized that the Lions were going to last stand it no matter what, so he summoned the Steel Legion, a bunch of badass guardsmen from Hell's Reach to help him fight alongside the Lions.
That's one way to do it.
Grimaldus, the Steel Legion, and the last of the Lions charged Mannheim Gap, this time against unsuspecting but still very numerous orcs. It was an absolute meat grinder as thousands died by the minute. Eventually Grimaldus came face to face with the massive OP war boss,
Go ahead, take his arm.
as Grimaldus basically had a massive flag which said, "I'm better than you, come at me, you big green bitch." The two
Don't we all have that flag?
fought, and whilst Grimaldus' plot armor was great, he was eventually knocked to the ground. At that moment, Dubaku appeared and was like, "Rawr," and told Grimaldus to stop trying to steal his kill. Hence Dubaku and the war boss fought each other, and to his credit, Dubaku did a really good job, but soon had his arm torn off and his leg sliced off as well,
LMAO, fuck.
knocking him to the ground, obviously. Grimaldus jumped on the war boss's back and started choking it with a chain, pretty much exactly like that scene from Goblin Slayer. No, not the rape one, the one where he chokes that big ass goblin with that hair, except this time it was chains. The war boss still refused to die despite the immense pressure on its neck, until Dubaku fired a final shot from his bolter pistol at its throat. The pressure released and the war boss's head exploded off its shoulders.
See, like I said, decapitate. It's a good way.
During this, the Steel Legion had managed to blow up the Orcs' Void Shield, hence allowing Black Templar reinforcements to drop in and finish the battle for the Imperium. Dubaku survived and received a number of bionics as well as praise and honour from the leader of the Black Templars, Lord Helbrecht. He had really done Dawn proud that day as he jumped into a strike cruiser with the last handful of his men and set a course for home
You say the last handful, there was like 96 of them.
to rebuild their chapter, and they all lived happily ever after.
The end!
Except they fucking didn't!
Fuck!
As then the Great Rift opened and a huge Chaos army attacked their home planet. At this point I'm suspicious that the Inquisition was behind the fall of Cadia, purely so they could fuck with the Lions.
Let me imagine. That would like be... If that came out, Inquisition would be done for, but they wouldn't go down easy.
The Lions evacuated what people and what warriors they could before their planet fell. Dubaku reached out to the Emperor's spears and was like, "Yo, can we share your home planet?" But before a deal could be struck, a Chaldeus assassin sent by the Inquisition jumped out and cut off Dubaku's head,
Bye!
killing him and the Lions' last hope and pretty much pissing on their grave. The ship carrying the Celestial Lions Primaris reinforcements and Gene Seed was sabotaged and lost by the Inquisition. Hence the Emperor's spears have shared how to make Primaris with the 30 or so Lions that are still kicking. Not that they will be kicking for much longer, but GW made sure to allow some kind of lore loophole for people wanting to play with Primaris Celestial Lions. The Celestial Lions were a good example of what happens if you try play against the fundamental rules of Warhammer 40k. You cannot be 100% noble and pure, just like you can't use common sense. It's like a universal negative response if you try to take the grimdark out of the setting. In saying that though, I really like their story and how the Inquisition doesn't take shit from anyone.
The Inquisition's fucking corrupt.
Other than Logan Grimnar, but I'm pretty sure Khorne would take shit from Logan Grimnar if he was faced with that situation. And that does us for today, guys.
That was a good video, in part. Let's go to the end. So that was the Celestial Alliance, probably the only part of the Imperium that is almost as unlucky as the Lamenters. But, pretty cool faction, not too bad, not bad for an Imperial fist. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. If you liked the video, do leave a like, subscribe and turn on the notification bell, and leave a comment if you have something to tell me, if you want to know more about them, if you want me to know more about them, if you have a recommendation for me to respond to. Don't forget, the next episode is out on Patreon now. I am proud of you for getting through today. Even more proud of you for getting through tomorrow. Alvidasen, Arrivederci, Gudashudas, all the way go. Peace. See y'all in the next one. Bye!